Welcome to Global Daily Insights by Sri and Sri. This is a weekend wrap up as there is much happening. Today is the 3rd of April 2021 and this is episode number 133. Namaskaram Sridharji.
Namaskar and good morning, and I hope you all had a wonderful Friday.
And here are the main points. Catch and bus. Spreading Biden's surge migrants across the country. A bus might be coming to your city very soon. India will join its Quad partners Australia, US, Japan in a first meeting with France. US economy adds 916,000 jobs as unemployment falls to 6%. And Hunter Biden concedes that the controversial laptop absolutely could belong to him. Major League Baseball All-Star game scheduled to be held in Georgia has now been called off. In US news, as law and order tumbles, Capitol is under lock and key on Friday after a vehicle rammed into two US Capitol police office cars as per law enforcement. In the Capitol Hill shooting, the suspect responsible for the death of an 18-year veteran of the US Capitol Police Force on Friday has now been identified as Noah Green, a 25-year-old supporter of the Nation of Islam. Mr. Green, an Indiana native, attempted to enter the US Capitol complex by ramming his vehicle into the main security checkpoint along Constitution Avenue. After failing to breach the checkpoint, Mr. Green lunged from the vehicle and ran aggressively at Capitol Police with a knife in his hand. He was subsequently shot by the police and died at a local hospital as a result of the injury.
This is just one more incident in the Capitol Hill of complete collapse of law and order that is taking place because of the unruliness that seems to be prevailing in Capitol. Very sad day. I think DC is under siege. There's something fundamentally wrong. DC is under siege because there are far too many incidents happening and happening with repetitive frequency. So what exactly is going on there? And these bus surges, and one of the cities that is going is DC, is not going to be very, very helpful in terms of the type of people that are going to be surrounding the Capitol.
So the next item was about this catch and bus spreading that Biden is trying to do to get and spread the migrants across the country. Sir, so what is the idea to try and place them in some government-owned buildings until they get their day in the court?
I think that they are being mixed into the communities. That is the verdict that is coming out. This is the first piece of information that is breaking, very specific. I think they don't want to have a melee. They don't want to have an observation. They don't want to have any witnesses. They do not want to see this drama fold out in borders. So they have come up with this new technique. It seems like, we don't know how many buses, etc. But this bus surge is rightly on. And it is very clear. It is very orchestrated and very specific and targeted. They are sending these buses into, now formally confirmed by press, New York, DC, Miami in Florida, and which part of California, don't know. And they have avoided the southern hill states like Arizona, Missouri, Montana, New Mexico. They have avoided these fulcrum districts, and they're sending them into these big urban locations. Perhaps in big urban locations, it's easy to hide and get away.
And sir, this appears amazingly similar to what we saw with the Rohingyas that got resettled in strategic areas between the period 2004 and 2014 under the UPA rule. They would bring the Rohingyas from across the entire state, entire country of India, and then they would go and settle them in Jammu in areas where there was a 50-50 kind of split. So they wanted this to go up.
Perhaps, who knows, sir, the Indian playbook is being played out to its perfection in United States. They learnt all the tricks of the trade there, and look at all the groups that basically advocated the welcome back of Democrats who funded. So they're all kind of seems to be part of the setup, and a lot of these lessons seems to have been learned from there, and that is now being advocated. This is not something that we have seen in United States in 4 decades plus. what we are seeing this is being played out. What exactly is the role of Mr. George Soros is in this? Is he kind of, he had talked about some of this stuff before, and we also saw the case where his deputy nominee in LAPD, who has now rescinded lots of those cases. He's supposed to be a Soros kind of a sympathizer, and where the LA County has got, complete breakdown of law and order. So we don't know. There seems to be loose pieces, only can anecdotal. There is nothing that can be connected because you will be called a conspiracy theorist. But the fact is, you look at these facts. When you look at these facts, these are unheard of. So I've asked the question, so should we now have passport controls? Should we now have immigration and border control at the airports? If people can seamlessly come in, board a bus, and maybe electronic buses, so it is clean energy buses. So we all can have clean energy buses in airports. You come in, you get down, you pass through, get into the bus, electronic buses, clean energy, safe, you travel. Either you go home or you go into the community. Maybe that's coming soon.
Sir, how many people have crossed over since the Biden administration settled in, sir?
The number is around close to 1.4 million.
This is in the last 4 months or 3 months?
The total number of people, let me correct. In the last 3 months is close to about 250 to 300,000. But where they come up with this 1.4 million number, I don't know. But the number of illegal, no longer called illegal aliens, etc. These seamless citizens seems to be about numbering 1.4 million. That's the number. How the arithmetic is made up, we will one day kind of break those numbers too. But close to 300,000 people. Apparently in March alone, close to 199,000 people crossed.
Yes, and remember viewers, we showed you a video of a senator showing the border in McAllen, Texas, how it was happening. And in next news, Hunter Biden concedes that the controversial laptop absolutely could belong to him. What's all these things, sir? Either it's his or it is not. What is he trying to say?
I think that maybe FBI has told him concede, well, he's basically saying it could be absolutely his laptop because they probably have done the scan, IP, everything. So there's more data that is available that basically conclusively proves that belongs to him. Now he's going to say, so what? It's mine. Just, you saw in recent case, the server case has been shut down by a server case of Hillary Clinton has been shut down by the Supreme Court no longer for investigation. That seems to be her server, which has been given to somebody else. Nothing happens, hushed up. So even in the United States, we hush up lots of these things. So this will also be kind of, nicely hushed up because mainstream media never covered, nobody covered. But now he has stood up and basically said, well, it's my laptop, so what?
And Biden says that his massive tax increases will make the economy better. What are your thoughts, sir? We don't think that is the right thing to do, but what are your thoughts, sir?
My thoughts are that I think let's give a one-line anecdotal answer, which is namely to say, nowhere when you spend money and then determine how you exactly fund the money, and you find sources which has no correlation, then you do get into difficulties in terms of this. Because, very simple, I want to give 400 million to this. I want to give 621 million to these specific types of grants. I want to give for the elderly care and disabled 400 million. I want to give, for reconstruction and retubing and highways 560 million. Good. Because you have determined how much money to spend. Right? Good. Because you all believe this is all worthwhile needed. We'll become green, clean, we are going to boost, the world will be protected for next 200 years, all good, everything good. So how do you earn this money? No, you don't earn the money. I suddenly find that there is a huge pool of taxes sitting. The huge pool of taxes is sitting in the corporate profits. These people don't deserve that much of profit. So I need that money. Why I need that money? Because I need to spend the money here. So the money that you are spending has no correlation to the person. Suppose you go and you run your restaurant, you run a bar, you run a hotel. You find that you made some money, extra money, because of 21% tax versus 28. They say, oh, you got too much money sitting there. So let me take that money and then use that money for my purpose, so my political objective can be done. So this is the disconnect between whether you are a Janet Yellen with a PhD or whether you are an Alan Greenspan with a PhD. When you take money that doesn't belong to you and not earned by you, for which taxes is already paid, that means you can park your intellect and you can park your degree outside and throw the economics out. So this is about the economics, which is very simple. The money has not been earned by the efforts of the outcome. The money has been stolen from somewhere, so you can fund this. That's all it is. So they are trying to now find the money from the corporate taxes and suddenly find, oh, in 15 years, I will pay back because I would have taken the money. We are going to do a threadbare analysis of each line item of this number. There's about 64 line items. We will reconcile it to those numbers and we will show to people that see the numbers, make your own judgment. It's like this. You have money in your account and you say, oh, you have money in the account, let me take and spend it. Well, that means money is gone. It's not used for any specific purpose. But we will do that in a separate show.
Yes, we will. Thank you, sir. And Obama's nuclear pact with Iran might get a second life as proxy talks with Iran. We talked about this yesterday. That might also include now the United States, as they too have been invited. Sir, it's really laughable why Biden wants to do so many things in a hurry when he can't even do one thing properly, which is to get COVID under control.
Well, I think that he's basically responding to all these different Muslim, Islamic, Council, Arabic relations, all these different groups. There was even rumors that there are sleeper cells of Iran in this country. So they have basically unleashed and they're saying it's time to pay back. And the renegade EU is also part of this. And China has thrown the axe in the middle of the tree by signing a 15-year deal with Iran, 10-year deal with Iran on the purchase of the gas. Remember, there are Iran sanctions prevalent and more sanctions just on the threshold of the elections. We were contemplating more sanctions with nuclear. Now, China has said, I violate UN norms and I'm doing a deal. Is there any enforcement possible? Is UN very relevant? No. So they're legitimizing UN. And there is always a soft corner for Obama-Biden administration to Iran relative to Israel. Till today, United States has not answered the question, what's happened to the embassy? What is going to happen to the embassy? They have not answered the question. There's an existential threat to Israel. In the meanwhile, they're going ahead with this. How many countries where Iran has problem with? Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Yemen. So you name. So many countries they have problems with. And then, of course, there are problems with the Shia-Sunni classic kind of a problem that is prevalent. In the middle of this, we are going to, Mr. Biden is renegotiating this deal with no restrictions. They are fully enriched. Apparently, they have got some deep caves in which they are building their kind of materials. And obviously, Israelis probably know something about this more than any of us do. So the story is that this is another kind of a drama that is unfolding.
And the Democrats are sending 120 million first tranche to Palestine territories, and the Islamic groups like CARE and all other sleeper Iranian cells who touted for Democrats win the day. The money has worked for them. And sir, you just touched upon this, and I'll let you answer this one, and then we'll go to the most important thing perhaps in US today, which is the Major League Baseball All-Star Game cancellation.
But there has been a group that is working to bring Iran back into the kind of the mainstream. Whereas the historical UAE or the Saudi Sunni groups work of the lobby groups in Washington, D.C., the Iranian and other groups seems to have been far more deeply scattered around the country, and kudos to them. They have done a very good job in making sure that their voice is heard, and they are getting rewarded. This 120 million comprises of $40 million for some economic upliftment. $25 million consists of some money for uplifting the territories, another $40 million is this. This is COVID money. Remember, COVID money going to Palestine. COVID is for treating people in United States, not for treating people in Palestine.
Yes, indeed. And in the major news event of the day, we had talked about this a couple of days ago. Major League Baseball has called off its All-Star game that was to have taken place in Georgia. The governor of Georgia has blasted MLB for same. Sridharji, there is a lot of undercurrents here. Who brought about this whole thing? And how does the new law of Georgia discriminate against anyone? I look at it and I'm completely confused, sir. I don't see any discrimination.
You don't. There was a very interesting press conference yesterday, Friday, between Jen Pasek and the media with regard to this Georgia. So she was questioned. She began to say that this is basically the voting law completely discriminates against the African Americans in terms of voting times. So the question was asked. The law is very clear that there is very flexibility in terms of the voting duration. It starts at 8, finishes at 5. But the law permits the early starting at 7. It also starts. It's also flexible to stretch it beyond 7 to 7:30. So that means we now have a time window which is around 12 and a half to 13 hours. So therefore, the question was asked, tell me, how does it discriminate? Okay, how does it discriminate this extended time? And she started to backpedal. And the second question was asked, which is you wanted water because the reason is it can be hot. And, so therefore the water tables, people may go drink water, come back, there may be delay, long queues, long lines, etc., etc., etc. So they said that the water bottles are kept at social distancing, 150 meters. So every frequent, there is water tables and you can drink the water when you want. So the story is that part of it is also addressed. So the question was asked, again, explain, is there any data that points out this delay and this facility mitigates specifically African American who are returning late from work? If you are returning late from work, you have a 2.5 hours time window that's available. Plus more counties are open, more places are open for the elections, for the voting to kind of happen. So no explanation has been given. Now, the businesses which is fearing the reprisal of, because there's major corporations in, you have Delta, you have AT&T,
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola, you have major businesses, hotels, there. So therefore, they're afraid that this could create some kind of a union kind of a backlash. So the story is, it is more the Stacey Abrams drama, who is the Democratic Party leader, who is pushing and pushing and pushing. And they basically use this system and still unproven and, to be proven on what happened exactly in Georgia Senate elections. Okay, that's number one. The second point that we need to touch on is around the much more serious issue, which we touched a little bit yesterday. Use of serial numbers versus the signatures, because the signature verification did not work. There's a lot of missing signatures, authentication problems. So serial numbers. So the question is around whether there is a serial number matching between the application received versus the application filed. That is the whole another area of contention. So question was asked, why is a serial number matching incorrect? Why? Is it because they take a ballot and they throw that ballot and they take another ballot? This is where the issue is. So there seems to be some issues around the consistency of the ballot received and the consistency of the ballot posted. Whether any of these things are going to come to surface, we don't know. So the businesses, most of the Silicon Valley and other businesses are left-wing ragtags. Okay, they basically kind of, while they don't want unions in their offices, you know the dispute between Bernie Sanders and Amazon that is going on around the unionization of the elections and right to work and right to earn and so on. So they get away with this hypocrisy because they pay money to all these specific groups. But then you raise this issue. So where has this led to? This has now led into sports. Okay, This has now led into the sports. Now, who controls sports? I looked at one sport, which is NBA. Close to 15 to 16% of the income comes from China in for NBA. We are going to do the analysis of how much comes from for MLB and how much comes from NFL and how much comes from other sports. So there is a significant amount of surrogate influence also coming from the external forces by virtue of the money. The more money that you put in, the more influence that you have in influencing these people by stirring up their kind of emotions. So we are now into a hot potpourri, and maybe we are beginning to see the we are seeing beginning to see some kind of deconstruction of the sports. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is MLB, not even NBA. Okay, so this is what we are seeing is the tip of the iceberg. Where this is going to go, as we kind of as this story develops, remains to be seen. Big money, big influence, and we already covered that the Chinese have quoted a lot of the black schools and black colleges, and basically advocating this equality, neutrality, all these kinds of rules and laws that are kind of creeping into the system. But very worrying signs.
And it has been our contention that the BLM has been hijacked from under them. It's being done by somebody else. And I think all these kinds of actions only lead more credence to that theory. And in global news, sir, use gun and a force to unify Taiwan, say Chinese people, as we get closer to the brink. Sir, is this really the Chinese people or the Chinese media, which is actually the government mouthpiece saying this?
Government mouthpiece. The government mouthpiece, basically saying it. But again, they are stirring up the people. That's what happens. Many of my Hong Kong friends told me that not the Hong Kong, but the Chinese, mainland Chinese Hong Kong told me, Sridharji, mark our words. Look, I spent more than a decade and a half in China, in Hong Kong, and in that specific region in the early years. So I have pretty deep insights, and also worked with a couple of very leading people in the region during that particular phase. It's very clear that they will enforce their will. And the latest developments that we covered, the 5 points that is changing and reshaping Hong Kong. I think what we are seeing is they are hell bent on Taiwan. So whether there will be a world war that will eventually break out as a result of Taiwan remains to be seen. But Taiwan has become a very, very emotive issue for China.
Well, if that is how China is going to be broken up, so be it. I mean, what can we say? These people seem to have some sort of a war wish, and
it's not going to be. This is not going. This is not. This unilateralism has never worked. Even during the Cold War, we had balancing of power between the Russians and the US. So there's going to be some significant kind of consequence that's going to come out of this.
And as China approaches ASEAN to break the encirclement of South China, France will be leading Quad naval drills in Indo-Pacific Challenge. One more thing that you had mentioned, sir, in a previous conversation, that France is taking a very active part now in Quad, as opposed to what was expected to be Britain.
Indeed. They are leading the effort. The effort kicks off on Monday. It'll be very, very coordinated set of drills, orchestrated and led by France. I think it's France and Japan and Australia which brought India to the table. So India will be an active member, and they want to cover from all the way from Indian Ocean to the Indo-Pacific region. So French clearly sees this as a very strategic roadmap, and they see now themselves as the power to be emerging from Europe, independent, strong, clear, and precise. Let's hope that Emmanuel Macron wins re-election and continues to drive the global agenda in a fair and objective manner. French has very strong submarines, and French has got phenomenal kind of artillery and machinery and equipment. So France will be an invaluable ally in terms of helping India with other countries to take this thing forward.
And Japan and United States aim for chip supply chain deal in April summit. So this is what again we talked about yesterday, that semiconductors are supposed to be now considered as one of the critical areas. And if, for example, Taiwan were to be invaded and occupied by China, then essentially the complete world's semiconductor requirement will be, completely in the hands of China.
Will be in the hands of the China. Remember, Taiwan has, up until more recently, had significant capacity in China. There's investments on either side, so Taiwan has a footprint in China as well. And to a great extent, that United States and Japan have been trying to wean Taiwan to expand their horizons. We downscaled semiconductor manufacturing industry under the pretext of cost. If you go back, since you come from the industry and you're extremely familiar, once upon a time, Texas and Arizona and even California were the global kind of headquarters of the semiconductor fab industry once upon a time,
Yes, yes, yes.
right?
Texas Instruments, yes.
Yes, yes. Texas, Motorola, Intel, and then what is that? Some next some I forget the name of another big company which all got absorbed. So we used
Right, right, right.
yeah, we used to make our own semiconductor. So I think one of the good things about the Obama is, I think I saw the Biden plan is there's a $54 billion allocated towards investing in capital support programs for the semiconductor industry. If that is properly deployed, and if that is basically directed towards some of these companies from capital augmentation, then we can see clearly the emergence of the chips coming in. Meanwhile, even Tesla has raised its head and said, look, hey, you don't need, I'm already making lots of the chips. And Intel is going to re-enter. I just heard that the press releases that Intel is also re-entering the manufacturing game shortly. So it's all augurs. There are very specific programs that are pretty good if it is capital is properly directed. But this is a good news that Japan and US are coming together to create a supply chain.
And foreign diplomats are fleeing North Korea amid food and drug shortages. This is something new, sir. What happened?
Well, I think that it looks like the pandemic is taking its effect because not much information is known. So there is also there has been all kinds of issues around that region. So hoarding is going on. There's been less transportation. If you remember that because of the COVID, there's been less logistics and lead food supply. And North Korea is reliant on that. So there probably shortage of food, shortage of medicines. So creating problems, and people are trying to flee. So two things that are happening as a result, because North Korea means China has a problem. So it has invited the South Korean foreign minister. They met a couple of days ago. Chinese Wang Yi and South Korean foreign minister met to discuss the Korean issue amid the rising tensions between US and China. In the meanwhile, United States is now trying to hold a dialogue with Korea and Japan to see how this North Korean issue can be tackled. You have no hope in hell with Japan and South Korea and United States, this particular regime, which is not sympathetic to the North Korean regime, have any hope in hell to tackling the North Korea. The only guy who seems to have tackled North Korea to some extent, the only two people, only Chinese, and the second is to some extent Trump was able to neutralize him. Barring these two, there's nothing. So there's again trouble brewing in that part of the region.
And in India news, India's vaccination drive continues as COVID giants gains traction in states. So COVID again under control except for a few states. So India is still much on top of the COVID problem.
India is getting to they are increasing the age threshold so that there's more. Having said that,
Actually, they're reducing the age threshold because now it's up to 45.
okay, reducing. Sorry, my apologies. And
Right,
corrected.
right.
Reducing the threshold. One state seems to be in the alarm, which is Bombay.
Maharashtra, right.
So apparently 46,000. I don't know what exactly is the scientific explanation that can be given. I'm also told that when I talk to, maybe these are more, little upscale population, there's a lot of organized and monitored programs to do testing, monitoring, and giving them treatment, and all those things are going on for a fee, as like a concierge type of a fee, apparently in Maharashtra or in Bombay. But having said that, the cases are rising clearly in Maharashtra. That's one state. But there's some limited restrictions coming in some of the states, like Karnataka included. So, what exactly is it? Because they're not following social distancing? Is it because they are just being certain sloppy on the rules? We don't know. But clearly, I think it's on the rise. When you actually overall look at the numbers, it's still not frightening from a global numbers point of view. But rise in cases always causes concern and anxiety in India.
Yes, and the Ministry of External Affairs states that there is no ban on COVID exports as the shipments continue. So India is still pushing on with its vaccine diplomacy, and India is also very much focused on its defense build-ups and preparedness as on one front while continuing to progress the economic agenda. So India is trying to fire on all cylinders, aren't they?
India is trying to fire on all the cylinders. Apparently, that they have now major, I don't know, 2,100 crores or some big number has been allocated. They are building the whole entire infrastructure around that Ladakh, Galwan, the Himalayan region. All those roads are likely to be kind of interconnected with new kind of highways and to provide faster mobility and so on. We also touched on that connection, the Himalayan connection, which
Right.
gives rapid movement and decreases the time that it takes from that Himalayan, from the Himachal Pradesh into the Leh region. So there seems to be very much keeping an eye on what's happening in that specific region, not letting the ball drop and moving things forward. These new Rafale airplanes that have landed, three or four of them in the Rajasthan Air Base. That's also going to augment further in terms of their capabilities on the air side. So I think India is saying that while I continue to build the economic programs, yes, people say that macro reforms is slow, macro reforms is slow. India is India. India is a large bureaucracy. It is now crossed $3 trillion in its economic output.
Sir, the markets are closed for Good Friday today, and the Dow futures are rising 150 points on the back of an excellent jobs report. We mentioned the numbers last week or yesterday's news, and the US economy adds 916,000 jobs as unemployment now falls to 6%. So this trend, do you expect it to continue?
I do, because it is the aggrieved sector that is coming back to work. If you recall, one of the big SME is one of the big areas that creates employment and cash and circulation and business. And those sectors are, your bars, your pubs, your restaurants, your establishments, your leisure and hospitality kind of industries. So all of those things are getting reopened. People are coming back. I am told today, the latest news is that this morning's news is that Florida has seen fall in cases, and there's also a likelihood of lifting of the ban. And that means, the restaurant business and the casual labor business, which is, a combination of cash plus incentive to the workers, is coming back. One of the big things that people talked about it, that big casualty of COVID was this industry, will it come back? We said it will come back because United States is very much reliant on this hospitality industry and food and beverage and leisure and bars, restaurants, games, this specific industry. That's where the maximum employment and maximum cash circulation kind of takes place. So it's very good news. That's where the growth has come from.
And that's it for us for today. And have a great weekend. And we'll be back Monday morning, fresh, bright, and early. And as always, Namaskaram Sridharji. And we will see you on Monday morning.
Namaskar, and thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.